This presentation will look at professionalism, policy, and positionality through the lens of Australia's hidden curriculum. To begin this presentation, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional owners of the land on which I work and study. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. The impact of positive community-based relationships cannot be overstated. Graham Gower, Kath Ferguson, and Simon Forrest, all Indigenous academics from Western Australia, speak to the benefits that positive school-community relationships can have on student success outcomes. The trio also speak to how, if not implemented and fostered correctly, these initiatives can often be seen as tokenistic, with little longevity. Professionalism, policy, and pedagogy all have a role to play in ensuring the longevity of these initiatives. Poorly educated teachers with implicit biases and overtly racist and exclusive hidden curriculum can counteract these initiatives. As an educator, I plan on working with an inclusive and enthusiastic pedagogy where all students have the opportunity to feel seen, heard, respected, valued, and represented. And while there is policy in place to help ensure that students are seen, respected, valued, and represented, it can be contradicted with the hidden curriculum, with particular focus on Advance Australia Fair and teaching students financial literacy with the Australian coins. The apprehension that some teachers feel when it comes to teaching the formal Indigenous curriculum shows that policy does not translate to competent educators. Teachers need to be open and willing to understand and accept worldviews and aspirations that are not conducive to their Western ideology. Sarah Wufen, a non-Indigenous academic, writes about the lack of Aboriginal perspectives at Victoria's Sovereign Hill. She states that the exclusion of Indigenous perspectives did not occur as a lack of engagement, rather a deficit of staff knowledge, intercultural understanding, inclusive pedagogy, and relationships yet to be fostered with the traditional owners of the land, the Wadawurrung people. This quote in and of itself highlights that there are people working in the field of education that are all too commonly ill-equipped to teach Indigenous perspectives. Factors such as privilege, positionality, and independent worldviews all influence the way that we see the world around us and the way that we, as educators, deliver content to our students. It can be generally said that as educators in Australia, we do a pretty poor job at showcasing the truth in our history and teaching our students about Indigenous perspectives. We only need to look back to lesson 1 of this unit, where most of our class were of the impression that James Cook claimed Australia from Botany Bay. There needs to be a radical change in the way that we teach. However, we will not begin to see the reform that we so desperately need in the education system until we, as educators, are honest with ourselves about where we sit in Bennett's framework of the ethnocentric to the ethno-relative. Australia is a country that is littered with overt and covert racism. As educators, we need to be the change that we want to see. As previously mentioned, policy does not equal competent educators, and intention does not equal action. While the policies are in place to promote and protect the well-being of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, things such as the hidden curriculum counteract them and continue to perpetuate harmful messaging to these students. I believe that transformational change is on the horizon. However, as educators, we are still a bit away. I've been told that it takes 2 generations to see a change. And since the implementation of mandatory teachings of Indigenous perspectives in 2011, there is not a generation of students at a tertiary level or above that have made their way through their primary and secondary education with this embedded into the curriculum. As an educator who wants to be inclusive and enthusiastic for her students, I believe that the onus starts with me, furthering my education on Australia's history and committing to lifelong learning. actively attending PDs, standing in solidarity with First Nation students when the Australian flag is raised or Advance Australia Fair is played, and teaching my students about why we cannot have equality until we have equity. And this here is my reference slide. Thank you for watching, and I'm sure I'll see you around.